Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock and this is a Raid Shadow of Legends video. This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while. I've actually made it before, but that was without the power of editing. So now that we can edit this down into probably a more consumable version of the fight, I want to make a video about Chimera. Now, I want to say this, I'm only going to say this once because I don't want to constantly keep repeating myself and take up too much time. The purpose of this video is more about a general guide. You may not have these exact champions or they may not work for what you're trying to do on your account, but this is a very, very good strategy, tip, techniques, whatever, however you want to look at it, to beating Chimera. And it mainly revolves around two very, very important pieces. Piece number one is going to be Lydia. Lydia brings a lot to the fight. She has a fear on her A1. This can be used against the ram phase of the fight sometimes. We'll get into that when we get into the fight. She's also your decreased defense and weaken champion while also bringing strengthen and increased speed. Lastly, she brings block buffs and block active skills, which are incredibly important for Chimera. Lydia is one of the best champions in my opinion for Chimera, and she's free to get. You just have to do faction wars. If you don't already have her, I would make that a priority now. The other key piece of this fight is going to be a support champion. Now, I use Duchess personally, but what you're looking for is a cleanse with a block debuffs, revives. I like a full team revive personally, but Elva is a great option here and Cora is a great option here. I think Pythion is probably my best option here. The only reason I actually would prefer Pythion over Duchess. The only reason I don't use Pythion on this account is I actually haven't built for PvP. He's in a full stone skin set and I kind of don't really want to swap him and Duchess, which, you know, for no particular reason. Honestly, it's just not, I just don't want to swap them. It's as simple as that. Let's go ahead and get into it. I don't want this video to be too long for my editor. I'm going to try and keep this easy for him. So we're going to jump into it. I am going to do brutal just because it's easier for me to film. I've done this recording on Nightmare. Things can go wrong and it doesn't work out very well for the filming portion of it. We're going to jump into it. On turn one, one important note here, because the clan boss, or because Chimera has not taken a turn yet, because they're going to open with this ability, you can actually use your decreased defense and your weaken here. But normally at the first stage of this fight, because when they transition, they immediately take a turn, they will use that, which means their second ability would give them increased speed. You do not want the boss to have increased speed. For after the first turn, for all turns where you first fight the ultimate form, you're going to open up with your block buffs. So in future turns, we're going to go ahead and do that because we want to make sure that the boss does not get increased speed. That's actually very important. It's a lot bigger deal than you may think it is, because if the boss gets increased speed and you don't land your decreased speed, you get fewer turns to do damage. You want to maximize the amount of turns that you get to do damage. Now, my decreased speed champion is Gwendolyn here. Gwendolyn is my decreased speed champion, but she's weak affinity right now, so I have her in affinity breaker. Don't be afraid to do that with one of your debuffers. So we talked about these two already, and now that we're in the fight, we'll talk about the rest of them because this is pretty easy. We're just cycling through our abilities. So while I'm cycling through my abilities, making sure I keep my buffs up, let's talk about the other three. I have Newt, I have Acrizia, and I have Gwendolyn. I want to be clear. You can substitute these damage dealers for whatever works with your account. Maybe you don't have Gwendolyn, but you have Razelvarg, the rabbit, right? He would be a potentially good replacement without the buff extension features of Gwendolyn, right? Maybe you don't have Acrizia. Well, you could maybe use Mikage and Ninja, right, as a potential replacement. Not going to do as much damage, but that combo is really good, and I know a lot of other clanmates and friends of mine and people that make content use that combo quite a bit in this game and on this particular fight, so there's an option there, right? So don't get too hung up on the fact that I have a Newt and an Acrizia and Gwendolyn, and you may not have those champions and are like, so this isn't, I can't do this, I don't have champion X, Y, and Z. No, you may not be able to do as much damage as I can do, but getting through the phases of the fight is far more important than just your raw damage numbers, and I really want to emphasize that. So don't worry too much about the fact that I have a Crizia and I'm hitting and chunking for really big damage. Same thing with my Newt, right? We're hitting for pretty big damage there. Don't read too much into that. Just understand that what's important is the mechanics of the fight and understanding them. That's what this video is all about. We're going to keep cycling through our abilities. When we get to turn 5, we're going to stop using those abilities. So we'll go ahead and show that to you when we get there. Okay, so we are coming up on our first turn 5. Now, I have a rule when I do Chimera. Whenever I get to turn 5, I basically sound the alarm. Hey, oh, it's turn 5, it's turn 5, it's turn 5, right? Like, we want to make sure that you stop everything at turn 5. Now, I personally, on turn 4, am okay to continue using certain cooldowns. Even with the turn meter bar as high as it is, I'm usually okay to keep using my cooldowns, but then once turn 5 hits, so now we're on turn 5, I shut it all down, right? So I'm only going to A1 with my Gwendolyn now. Now, your damage dealers, in this particular case, being my Acrizia and my Newt, can still do their damage. That is still something that you can and should be doing, but you'll notice that I'm going to A1. I have all my cooldowns ready on my Lydia right now. I'm going to A1. Okay, now, do I need to do this before the ram phase? Honestly, not that much. This isn't really gaining me too much, but I think this is such a good practice to have in principle for players, because the key here is that when they transition, you're going to lose all of your debuffs, and most of the heads have some kind of interaction with your buffs that is negative for you. So on turn 5, which is the turn that the boss is going to transition to the next phase, it's actually really nice to just stop and save your cooldowns, save your buffs, save your debuffs, get through this last turn. There's the transition. And now we are in the ram fight. And you'll notice that my Lydia did live. Now, my Lydia is always the target, and I want to talk about that very, very quickly. So this is a very important part about the fight for ram form. And this is a thing that a lot of people get wrong, and they end up getting themselves in trouble. At the beginning of the Chimera's turn, places the duel effect on the Chimera and the enemy with the lowest crit damage. This effect cannot be resisted or blocked. Now, that's very important, because what that does is it guarantees that my Lydia is the target. You do not want your lowest crit damage to be your support champion, whether it's Ancora, Duchess, Pythion, Elva, whoever. Make sure they have more crit damage than somebody else that you don't care if they die. In my case, it's my Lydia. If the ram killed my Lydia there, I'm okay with that. I don't care. I can always revive her. Now, my approach to the ram form is a little bit different. I am not going to revive anybody who dies until turn 10. The reason being that most of them are just going to go ahead and kill themselves again. We will start going and putting our debuffs out. Now, I'm going to A1 here with my Acrizia, but she's going to kill herself, right? That is the one downside to Acrizia. When you're on ram form, she will kill herself. Now, the great thing about Lydia surviving there, that does not always happen, is that Lydia will only A1 the ram, and you'll notice she's putting fear on the ram. The ram can be feared. This, again, is why Lydia is so good here, because she can fear the ram head. So that's a ram phase. That's another phase that she can apply some type of special thing that no one else can do, right? Or that other champ that she just combines everything into one champion, and I love Lydia for this fight. Another quick thing that I didn't mention earlier, and I do want to mention it now, this is not about completing trials. This is just about doing damage and getting the chest. I am not currently concerned with trials. This is not for people that are looking to maximize their trials. You're going to need a much deeper roster than what I currently have to maximize the trials. This is about surviving all of the turns of this fight and maximizing your damage output for the sake of getting the max chest from, be it Nightmare or Brutal or whatever difficulty that you're doing. So please take everything I'm saying with a big asterisk to it, that I am not concerning myself with trials. There will probably be better guides and better videos out there to maximize your trials, but really the key is to just look ahead of time and say, okay, what do I need to bring in order to complete trial X, Y, and Z? Okay, we're going to go ahead and put the decreased attack out. Now, hopefully I should cycle back around to some more abilities. I did fail to get my leech on there. That would have been really handy to have. Be careful about that too. I probably would have preferred the leech over the decreased attack. That's my own doing. You'll see the leech is actually on my owl because they do reflect the first debuff that you put on them. The ram does. Again, we land that fear. They still got a turn. Cool. But I do love it when Lydia gets to be the dual tank for this. Now, we are on turn 9, so we're going to keep on going through here. Let's cycle through. There we go. We're almost at the end of turn 9. We just need to make it to turn 10. Cool. Now, most everybody survived, and this is where, like, if you can survive like this, which is not always going to happen, especially on the higher difficulties, a single target reviver works just fine. I prefer an AoE reviver, though, because usually on the higher difficulties, my Lydia dies. So then right now, I would be reviving everybody right as the boss transitions. And unfortunately, we took a little bit of extra damage that we wouldn't really want to take there. That's kind of just unlucky with the way some of my buffs landed and stuff like that. So we'll get Newt back up here soon, but I've already shown you every phase of this. So we're going to go ahead and catch you back at turn 15. Okay, so we are on turn 14 here. I wanted to emphasize this just a little bit more. When I'm on turn 14, that's not turn 15, and I hold very strict to this rule for the most part because I really want to optimize my damage. So I'm still going to be using cooldowns. I don't care. Even if I'm turn 14 and the turn meter is all the way up here, I am still going to go ahead and cycle through my cooldowns. But the moment that I hit turn 15, I shut it all down and we stop. So I'm not going to use the A3 because the debuff from the A3 is still applied right now. So we really don't need to reapply it. Usually I only open with that and then Gwendolyn just keeps extending that. But here we are, turn 14, almost a full turn meter. I am going to go ahead and use that cooldown. Now, hopefully this block debuffs, yep, gets extended. Like I said, the owl does that. Your damage abilities, just to be clear about that, will always be used regardless of the turn counter. Now we're on turn 15, so those alarm bells should be going off in your head saying, okay, I'm not going to use any of my buffs or debuffing cooldowns, right? So damage abilities are still fine. But for instance, like I wouldn't want to use my debuff here from Newt, right? I wouldn't want to use that decreased attack. I'm going to want that available when we transition to the next phase. Here again, I'm going to want this ability where I give my increased accuracy to my team. And even if the leech was off cooldown, which is the A2 for Gwendolyn here, and it's off cooldown now, I don't want to use that because I want it available for the next phase. That's my only form of healing in this team, okay? So it's very important, like I said, that turn 15, turn 10, turn 5, turn 20, turn 25, stop what you're doing. Stop using those cooldowns, right? Go ahead and just A1 the boss with your supports and your non-essential, but still do damage like I'm doing here with a Chrysia, right? And I'm doing big damage, right? Again, you may not have a Chrysia. Work with what you got, guys. Everyone's account is going to be different. Put your best DPS there. The one thing I would say that if you're going to replace Gwendolyn, who does a lot in this fight, and if you have her, I highly recommend you use her. But if you are going to replace her, still make sure that you're checking off 2 very essential boxes: decrease speed and leech. Now, those can be across 2 separate champions, but you want to make sure that you have that on your team. Or if you bring a support that brings more healing, that's another option. Now, for me, Duchess doesn't provide a lot of healing. If I had Pythion, I wouldn't really need the leech, right? Because Pythion's going to give me a decent bit of healing. All right, so we're going to transition into the next phase. And this is the part where I become a very bad content creator for you guys. I really don't know what this guy does. And I could go through and read all of these abilities, but then this video is going to be an hour long. What I will say is this is the least scary phase of the fight. On Nightmare, some of the time, out of nowhere, this guy pops off and wipes my team. On Brutal, it's not going to happen. If you're having trouble with this phase, my best recommendation, very simple, reread what the boss does and make sure that you're not playing into the boss's strengths on this phase. But for the most part, even on Nightmare difficulty, this phase doesn't concern me. Occasionally, Gwendolyn dies. I actually rebuilt my Gwendolyn to be stronger, but I actually had to take all of that gear off and put Affinity Breaker on for this particular rotation. My recommendation, if you are having trouble on this phase, is to strengthen whoever's dying, but not strengthen buff, but like build up their defense, their HP, right? But for the most part, I really feel like this is a great time to just pump a bunch more damage and try and yeah, because I've never really, especially on brutal difficulty, I've never had this guy do anything to me. I think this is probably the easiest phase, and this is also a really good phase to get some trials done too, right? If you're able to knock out a bunch of trials, this is a good phase to do it because you don't have to worry as much about the mechanics. So if you do care about trials, that is something I would recommend. Like I said earlier, I don't care that much about the trials. My main purpose here is to maximize my damage on the boss. We're going to go ahead and fast forward to turn 20 here. All right, we are just about to hit turn 20 here, so those alarm bells are not quite going off yet, but they are kind of on, you know, paying a little bit closer attention because we are just at a full turn meter. There's turn 20. I hate to keep emphasizing this, but I just want to make sure you guys know this is a strategy that I found that worked the best, right? Stage 20. We stop everything, right? So I'm just A1ing and doing damage. Even with Gwendolyn having multiple turns there, you'd be like, oh, you could probably squeeze in an extra so-and-so. You know what? You probably could, but for the purposes of just the ease of this fight, I'm not doing that. And just in case I forgot to mention it, I want to talk about why it's very important going back into the ultimate form, that you actually don't have a whole lot of buffs on your team, because it can actually hurt you quite a bit when you transition into this phase. Now, I do have a lot of protected buffs, so it won't hurt me as much, but you can see my HP pool is really, really high after the use of this ability. Attacks all enemies before attacking, removes all buffs from all enemies. The damage inflicted by the skill increases by 10% for each buff removed. If you have a bunch of unprotected buffs, this ability will chunk you down hard, maybe even kill some of your champions. That is why I say, hey, turn 5, turn 10, turn 15, turn 20, shut it all down. It's very easy to get confused, right? If you're kind of not paying close attention, you're doing something on another monitor, and you forget kind of what boss phase you're on. So just shut it all down on turn 5. That way you don't accidentally go into here with a bunch of buffs, maybe some unprotected buffs, and take a big chunk of damage that you don't want to take. And again, and this is just to reiterate, at the beginning of the fight, we open with our decreased defense and weaken, but here, because they are going to take this turn and increase their speed, we want to make sure we're blocking that buff. And now we're going to go ahead and replace all of our buffs, replace all of our debuffs, and we're just going to go ahead and do as much damage as we can in the next couple of turns. So I will see you guys at turn 25. Okay, guys, so we are on turn 24 now, and I'm actually going to start slowing down now because of how important this is, and it's only for the sake of recording. Most of the time when I do this, I can keep using debuffs until turn 25, use all my cooldowns, I should say, until turn 25, and be fine. But just to make sure that nothing goes wrong for the recording of this video, I am going to shut down everything on turn 24 here. But normally I wait until turn 25 because I'm quite fast. I've got decreased speed on the boss. I have increased speed on my guys. Usually it's fine, but sometimes when I record this video, it's not fine. Of course, it always happens when I'm recording that something has to go wrong. So I'm not going to use my cooldowns here. We're going to go ahead into turn 25. We're going to get through turn 25. If you take nothing away from this video, but one thing, I want it to be how important turn 25 is on this fight. This is the most important turn, and if you don't take your time here, you can ruin an entire run. I am almost at the halfway point. I have 83 million damage. I could end up throwing away 26 minutes of time simply because I choose not to slow down right now. On turn 25, you don't want to go into the next phase with any buffs if you can help it. Certainly not unprotected buffs, okay? We are still going to go ahead and pump some damage here. And the boss is going to go ahead and transition any minute now. All right, one more A1. I think that should be good. Okay, so now we have transitioned into the Viper phase. We take a pretty decent chunk of damage on most of our champions. So we're going to go ahead and buff up here. This is going to reduce some of the damage coming in. I am going to decrease the attack of the Viper. And we're going to get a leech on the Viper to go ahead and heal ourselves up. This right here is the most crucial part of Viper. Lydia has block buffs and block active skills. You can block the skills of the Viper just like that, and it is so crucial. Now, you could bring another champion in here to do what Lydia does, but not only does Lydia block the skills and block buffs, she also is your decreased defense and weaken champion, so she is better than something like a Loki, for example, because she can do it all, where you'd have to bring a different champion to bring that decreased defense and weaken, and Lydia's free to get. You just gotta do faction wars. I know just is a bit of a undersell on faction wars. It's not easy for everybody. I highly recommend getting her because look at what did he just do? He barely scratched anybody on this team with that hit there, right? Barely did anything. I didn't feel a thing, and I'm already topped back off because we're able to land my leech because I saved all my cooldowns, right? Lydia just makes the Viper portion of this fight so easy, and I'm willing to bet most of you probably are dying on the Viper phase of Chimera. So Lydia is super special to be able to fight this. Now, just a quick recap. Lydia, block active skills on Viper. She's your decreased defense and weaken on every phase. She's your block buff to prevent speed on the ultimate form. And she's even a fear on the ram form if she doesn't die. She's also a great target to be the one that dies against the ram form with the dual buff. So we're gonna end it here because if the video's any longer, I'm not gonna be able to upload it to my editor. I hope you guys take away from that. Please understand that I would be able to get through the remaining turns and get through this whole fight without anyone dying and using all of these tips and tricks. But Lydia isn't super important, and so is your cleanser, support, reviver, whoever you may go with. Right? Pythion, Elva, and Cora are a couple that come to mind, but you know, use what you have on your account. My free-to-play account doesn't have anybody, so I actually really suck at Chimera right now, so who knows? Maybe the next fusion will be a really good Pythion 2.0, right? Let's hope. Thank you guys for watching. If you're new here, which these videos tend to bring in a lot of new viewers, please consider subscribing. I want to make more content like this, and the best way for me to be able to make more content like this is to increase my subscriber count, so you guys can show me that you really enjoy this content and I can make more of it, right? The other way to support me, there is a link in the description and in the top comment on this video. That is a link to start a new account with Bambus and Tagoar at 15. That's really helpful to me. Please consider doing it, even if you just want to maybe experiment and try out a new account. I always learn something new when I start a new account that I didn't learn the first time that I went through. So I love making new accounts. It keeps me fresh, keeps me knowing what's going on in the meta of the game, makes me a better content creator, but I also think it makes me a better raid player. So give it a shot. I think you guys might enjoy it. I will